campaigns for an urgent suit against a controversial anti-gay bill passed by Parliament last week as he continues his onslaught against the bill.
After the authentication, the Speaker would have to certify. It's when all these are done that the bill is forwarded to the President for his assent. As we speak, as the leader of the House, I can say on good authority that we've not completed the process.
We are live in Parliament today, where it has been a controversial day. As we learned today that the Finance Ministry has advised the President, warning of dire economic consequences if he signs the controversial bill into law. The minority, they've been up in arms.
This, without any iota of doubt, it's an insult to the good people of this country. The streets must be flooded. Everybody must be prepared on this matter.
We, as a people, have come together to pass this law to reflect our family values and to protect safety.
In the last few minutes, the Majority Leader, Alexander Afenyo-Markin, has intensified his campaign against the anti-gay bill. On the day we became aware of the Finance Ministry's advice to the President, warning of dire economic consequences if he signs a controversial bill into law. The position of the ministry has left the minority side furious. More on that shortly. But first, listen to Ms. Afenyo-Markin speaking a short while ago.
The issues that members of Parliament led by my good self raised ought to be tested by the Supreme Court of the law of the land. I mean, we are a growing democracy. This is not an emotional journey. This is about laws that have to do with the rights of citizens. So the test here is whether or not a sexual right, which is in itself being brought to question, should lead to a criminal penalty. In other words, if as a nation we say that our value systems do not support a man-to-man relationship, woman-to-woman relationship, are we also saying that the means of reforming people with that orientation is to incarcerate them? How does this position stand in accord with the Constitution? Also, the issues of advocacy, saying that a media house cannot take certain steps. How do we juxtapose that within the context of the Constitution? All these are matters that I believe that if they are tested in our Supreme Court, is going to help us to bring this matter to a good rest. For me, like I've always said, it is good to legislate against same-sex relationship. It's good to legislate and even criminalize those who will entice underage, young boys who are not of age, adults who try to engage in pedophilia. Those ones, yes, because a child below 18 does not have the necessary means to take a decision. It's not an adult enough per our laws. So you cannot entice such a person. That's for that one, we agree. But if you say that when somebody is in that situation and the person must suffer a jail term, I think that there's a problem. And the Catholic Church, a couple of days back, came out strongly to make a passionate appeal on that matter. I believe that we would have to test the law on it and see. In any event, as a country, tolerance is part of our value system. Tolerance is part of our value system. So either way, we must find a middle ground. Ultra-conservatism can alone not be the way to reform a society, transform a society, and help grow a society. Our judiciary has a new sentencing regime, which sentencing regime talks about non-custodial sentencing as a form of reform, as a form of correction. And we know that the conditions in our prisons do not help in achieving that object of transforming, that object of correcting, that object of reforming people with such behavioral traits. So we have to proceed with some caution and again urge a strong view in testing the law at the Supreme Court so that we know where we are moving to as a state. Perhaps a journalist can give it a try.
Parliamentary correspondent Akufo-Addo joins us now. And Kweku, this was passed last week. There was no debate in the House today. So what was the context of this press conference?
Well, Alexander Afenyo-Markin has been under pressure to speak since this bill was passed. You will recall that he was the lone member of parliament in the entire 275 House who actually stood up against this bill until it was passed. And so he's been under some pressure to speak. In fact, last week he had organized a news conference to speak to the specifics of this bill. And we understand there was an urgent meeting at the Jubilee House that he had to attend to try and help government strategize in terms of how they would deal with this pressure that has now come on the president. And so today, on the back of that finance ministry advice to the president not to sign, and the pressure response that has come from the minority, some of us approached the majority leader to try and get a sense of what exactly his advice would be to the president if he is asked. He will not speak to those specifics. But of course, also the question that have come up in terms of when exactly this bill gets to land on the desk of the president. Today, I've been talking to some judges to try and get some information. They expect, the sponsors I'm saying, they expect that this bill will get to the desk of the president by the end of this week. But Alexander Afenyo-Markin says that calculation is just too ambitious. And that as a leader, he's privy to the fact that there's a lot more work that will be done before the clerk finally authenticates this. And so everyone putting pressure on the president must just chill.
On the presidency regarding the LGBT law Parliament passed. Well, the process is that when the bill is passed in Parliament, it has to be first compiled by the drafting department of Parliament. So you know that the bill went through several amendments. It has to be tidied up. And then thereafter, the clerk would have to authenticate it. And after the authentication, the speaker would have to certify. It's when all these are done that the bill is forwarded to the president for his assent. As we speak, as a leader of the House, I can say on good authority that we've not completed the process. So the public needs to know this so that a certain impression is not created out there that Parliament has transmitted the bill to the presidency and all. Nothing has moved to the presidency. In fact, Mr. Speaker is yet to receive the authenticated bill. The clerk to Parliament himself has not yet seen it. The drafting department is still compiling. I have been chasing it myself, and they say it requires some time because a lot of changes were done. And as a leader of the House, I don't have the draft bill, the compiled draft bill. So I just wanted to put this thing in proper perspective for our guidance. When all is done, I believe that you'll be informed. But I repeat that the drafting department of Parliament is still in the process of compiling the bill. And if I say they are compiling the bill, I'm basically saying that they are putting together all the amendments, seeing to it that the I's are dotted, the commas are there, the legal language is properly put in for us to know that indeed this is the state of the bill.
Quickly, so we know, yes, the bill hasn't been transmitted to the president just yet. Do we have any timelines when this will be done from Parliament?
The expectation of the sponsors is that this should be done as fast as possible. Some of them tell me that when the e-levy bill was passed by the House, it took just 24 hours for the president to get it. And I think this is also a very important bill that must get to the desk of the president so that the 7 days constitutional test will kick in and the 14 days will also kick in. That is to say, if the president decides not to sign it. So they expect that by the end of this week, the amendments that were passed by the House will all be incorporated and be sent to the desk of the president. However, if you listen to Alexander Afenyo-Markin, he says the bill is a laborious one. He does not expect it in the next few days. And so we do not have any clear timelines yet. The clerk is yet to speak to the specifics of this. But the sponsors expect that this will be done in a week, while Alexander Afenyo-Markin thinks that is too ambitious.
Quickly stay with me because there has been a bit more on this in Parliament, especially on the back of the revelations that the Finance Ministry has advised the presidency on how to approach signing this particular bill once it gets to the president's desk. And the Finance Ministry, after a meeting with the BOG, the GRA, and other key institutions, did advise the president that it is going to have significant economic implications for us if we go ahead and sign it in its current state. And I want to go through a few of the key points that the Finance Ministry highlighted in this circular. And this isn't the press statement. It's a circular that was put together to catalog what the potential impact could be for the president's own consideration. One is that the expected $300 million financing from the first Ghana Resilient Recovery Development Policy. This is under the World Bank. The Finance Ministry expects that will be affected. Secondly, they talk about the second Ghana Resilient Recovery Development Policy operation, again to support the budget, will also be affected. And why is this important? This is a deal that we signed with the World Bank just in January, to be very specific, on 23rd January. And it's supposed to come in 3 tranches. $300 million each, part of a broad World Bank engagement for crisis response and resilience in Ghana. Its objectives are threefold. 1, restore fiscal sustainability, support financial sector stability and private sector development, improve energy sector financial discipline, and strengthen social and climate resilience. So that for the Finance Ministry is important and likely to be affected. Now, they go on to also specify, as you know, the Financial Sector Stability Fund is something the banks are looking forward to on the back of the DDEP.
Yeah.
Now, that too, the Finance Ministry says, having considered the potential impact, that also could be affected. And in other words, 250 million may not come. Kofi with the research desk is with me. That's not all, right? A total of 3.8 billion at stake here.
So the Ministry of Finance is saying that Ghana is likely to lose about $3.8 billion in World Bank financing over the next 5 to 6 years, Evans. So for 2024, Ghana will lose about 600 million in budget support and 250 million for the financing of the the Financial Stability Fund. This will negate or negatively impact on Ghana's foreign exchange reserves and exchange rate stability, as these inflows are expected to shock the country's reserve position. And you know that the 250 million inflow is actually tied to the IMF program that we are currently under, Evans.
Specifically on the IMF program, though, the ministry, while acknowledging that there isn't a direct conditionality in the IMF program relating to the passage of the bill. However, they talk about the principles that the IMF program is based on, the principles on predicated on financing from the World Bank, but also the IMF on inclusion, but also issues about non-discrimination is also there. And they believe that if this is not managed properly, it could come back to hurt us. We've seen the IMF say they're watching Ghana very closely on the back of the passage of this particular bill.
And if you look at the wording, they could not quantify the magnitude that we will be losing as a result of the IMF negotiation, but they were able to do that for the World Bank. So when it comes to the IMF, they were really careful on not to quote a certain figure, because they were not, I'm sure they were not so sure how much we're going to lose. But if you look at the World Bank, they are estimating around $4 billion.
But they have recommendations to the president. It says at the presidency, they are asking for some structured engagements with local conservative forces, such as religious bodies. And we'll be hearing from the religious bodies pretty shortly, because that's the finance ministry's advice to the presidency on how to approach this particular matter. But the intention of that advice, in other words, when you engage, what should you be looking for? What's the outcome? What outcome should you be anticipating? The finance ministry says they want the presidency to engage these faith-based organizations so that they can appreciate the economic implications of the passage of the anti-LGBTQ bill, and to build a stronger coalition and a framework for supporting key development initiatives that are likely to be affected. And so that's the intention for engaging. They also talk about effective engagement with conservative countries, including the Arab countries and China, because this is a place you can go to to get funding to plug the gaps that will emerge if indeed you lose the World Bank support that they've articulated and listed. Then they also ask the president to also, defer, and I want to quote here, defer assenting to the bill until the court rules on the legal issues tabled by key national stakeholders. And as you've heard there, Afenyo Marking making the point already,
very clear.
Already encouraging somebody to go to the Supreme Court and challenge the bill as it currently is and drafted, waiting to be transmitted to the president. The ministry itself at this level says they're doing a few things.
So they also have a charge to keep. They said the ministry will continue to engage with the IMF on the alternative credit sources of funding that will plug the financing gap. So the GRA to embark on a vigorous revenue mobilization drive, focusing on implementation of approved measures as well as compliance. And they also talk about the consideration of possible expenditure rationalization to accommodate the shock from the potential withdrawal of resources. And the last one is that they are going to leverage on the Ghana Beyond Age principles and change the structure of the country's resource mobilization. And they say they must improve our domestic resource mobilization efforts by working towards our medium-term tax revenue to GDP target of 17%, 70 to 80%. Currently, they are doing around 13%, and eventually wean ourselves off the unsustainable dependency on the development assistance.
Now, we'll go to Parliament for reactions pretty shortly, but let's put this in context. The potential damage that this could cause the economy, as enumerated by the finance ministry, it's predicated on the IMF program, because even the World Bank disbursements are predicated on conditioned on the IMF, the success of the IMF program. But we have been digging around, right? We have found there are many other countries currently under IMF programs with similar legislation criminalizing, homosexuality. What has been the story there in terms of how the IMF has approached these countries?
Well, Evans, let's start with a perfect example, Zambia, because we all did debt restructuring. So Zambia has a law against LGBTQ activities, and it started in 2005, tightened in 2023, and you could go, have life imprisonment if you engage in some of these activities. Zambia is currently under an IMF program of $1.3 billion, which started in 2022 August, and they've been able to, get their second tranche in December. That was when they had their last money. They've been able to cash in $561 million from the IMF. So even though they have laws against LGBTQ activities, they've been able to sail through their IMF program. Another example is Zambia, Kenya. They started in 2003. And you know that a Supreme Court ruling in February 2023 said the Constitution barred discrimination based on sex, and this was heavily criticized by members of Parliament and even the President. You could go to prison for 14 years in Kenya if you engage in some of these activities, but they are also currently under an IMF program worth $4.4 billion. They started in April 2021. They've enjoyed so far $2.6 billion in terms of disbursement. It's been smooth. There's no condition with respect to LGBTQ activities. There's also Senegal, Evans. They started in 1966, and according to them, there was actually a bill in Parliament to toughen the already strict anti-LGBTQ law in Parliament. But in fact, in January 2022, the lawmakers decided not to pass a draft bill that sought to, strengthen the already severe laws against the same-sex marriage. They are also under an IMF program worth $1.5 billion. They've been able to enjoy $279 million from the.
But at least they held back from passing the bill that would have strengthened it. I want to go to Parliament now. Quick, today, on the back of this circular becoming public knowledge, we'll be getting some reactions, strong reactions from the minority side.
Yes, Evans. In fact, the minority MPs say they are furious that the finance ministry will want to put a few dollars ahead of Ghana's cultural values, ahead of Ghana's values that are imbibed in the bill that was passed by the House. In fact, Alhaji Abia Hussein even goes ahead to suggest that perhaps people must pour out on the streets to show that they are against any such views. Let's listen to them.
Without any iota of doubt, it's an insult to the good people of this country to say that Ghana as a sovereign country, as a sovereign independent country, must subsume the rights, interests and aspirations of people to the altar of the interests and beliefs and values of external bodies like the IMF, World Bank and WHO. So the interest of the World Bank, IMF is more than that of Ghanaians. It's not worth protecting, but what is worth protecting is the interests and aspirations of the IMF. The streets must be flooded. Everybody must be prepared on this matter. To come onto the streets, thousands and millions of people must be prepared to flood the streets on this matter to protect our independence and sovereignty.
The flag bearer of the MPP, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, to speak on this matter. The former president, John Dramani Mahama, and the candidate for the NDC has spoken and he has made his position clear. Are you saying that when he comes to power, he will need foreign aid? He's aware of the implications, but he has juxtaposed the harm that this will cause us vis-a-vis the income or the wealth that we are going to get from foreign aid. And that's how we have to look at it. That's the perspective in which we have to look at it. It's so shameful, and I'm a very sad person today.
It is important that we recognize that these funds, in most cases, are loans anyway. The IMF, the World Bank, hardly, give us any grants. These are loans. And so it is not a one-way street. It is a mutually beneficial relationship that we have built over the years together. And we as a people have come together to pass this law to reflect our family values and to protect same.
Reactions there from Parliament on the back of that circular that we now know the Finance Ministry drafted for the President's own consideration. And in there, as part of the recommendations to deal with this, yes, they say the Presidency should not assent to the bill just yet. They should wait out and see how this pans out if it goes to court. We've heard today the Majority Leader making the point that encouraging people to go to the Supreme Court and challenge this bill as it stands. But another recommendation in there is for the Presidency to engage with conservative forces such as religious bodies, faith-based organizations to communicate the economic implications of the passage of this particular bill. And I want to bring in right now the Very Reverend Father Clement Kwesi Adjei. He's the Secretary General of the National Catholic Secretariat and Ghana and the Catholic Bishops Conference. Joins us right now. Very Reverend, thanks for your time here on Top Story.
Yes.
Great to have you. The Finance Ministry is very clear that we stand to lose some $3.8 billion if we go ahead, the President assents to this and it becomes law. They want the Presidency to engage yourselves on this matter so you can understand the economic implications. Knowing, now quantifying the implications, are you still in favor of this being assented to the way it currently is with a custodial sentence for people who are found guilty?
Thank you very much. This financial assistance, is it a grant or a loan? In fact, when I follow the discussions going on, what I get is that because Ghanaians are poor, Ghana is poor, and they are going out for financial assistance, you want to just strangle us, something we don't want as Ghanaians. You want us to use your money to just prevent us from doing what we want, what our people want. LGBTQ, we don't want it. Ghanaians don't want it.
Majority saying we don't want it. About 90, maybe 98.5%. We don't want it. And because we don't have the money, we are going for assistance. We say we could get it. Is it fair? Is it what the UN is actually standing for? I don't think so. I don't think so. Yes, we are ready to engage government to express certain things to us. We also put forward our ideas and our understanding. But I still hold that poverty should not be used to let somebody succumb to the will of the other. That's what I have to say. But the church is always ready
to engage. But the reality, though, is the economy is currently in crisis. We are currently on an IMF program. The IMF says you're watching us very closely. The Finance Ministry, together with the Bank of Ghana, is advising that the potential loss to this economy will be devastating. I mean, we can't survive without the 3.8 billion that they quantify, can we? And that will have real impact on the lives of the people that you lead in the church, for example.
I mean, is Ghana the only country undergoing the IMF program? Other countries also have these LGBTQ laws and so on. And have an IMF and the World Bank refuse to accept. I think probably they are taking it too far. And I don't think so. I don't think because we have agreed to ban LGBTQ practices and so on. No nation, I mean the UN, IMF and the World Bank will not help us. I don't think so. Maybe they are using to terrify us, to put fear in us. I don't think so.
So you still stand by your original position that now that the bill has been passed, the president must assent to it, regardless of.
Sure.
What about the second argument, which is that yes, but what about the custodial part of the bill, that you should throw people in jail just because they have a sexual preference that you believe is against our values?
Those are the issues that we must look at, and not the financial matter bringing in things. Yes, but that's what they've been doing. And then I know that the bill is the form at which it went into Parliament is not the same. Yes, people, opinions, and so on. We can still discuss it. Those kind of things. Whether somebody should be jailed, or because what are you looking for? Deterrent or informative? You see, those are the things we can debate. But it doesn't mean that, in fact, the LGBTQ plus how do you call it, activities we should support. No. But the sentence can be looked at again. That's why I don't think the church is against it. Because it's about the human person. It's about our brother. It's about our sister, who we think is not following the rules, the order of Ghanaians for the Ghanaians. So you can look at that. But that doesn't mean that we are for it. No, we are against it. But how do we treat the person?
So just to be clear, the church is in favor of scrapping the custodial sentence section in the law? It is possible.
Because what we want is a human person to change from his ways. You see? From his ways. But if it comes to the point that that's the only way, fine. But if they can also remove the custodial sentence, fine. If only to help. Because we are not just after punishing the person. We want the person to be punished and to be reformed. So you have to look at all these kind of things. All these things. But getting our brother back is more important for the church.
Finally, the Finance Ministry's advice to the president is that he should not assent to the bill just yet. What do you say to that?
If the president accepts, or the finance minister, if the president accepts the advice of the finance ministry, that's what you're saying. Hello?
Yes. If the president decides to accept it, that's advice to the president.
And fails to assent, yeah. For that, the church cannot do anything, but we will speak and we continue speaking against what we think is wrong. In fact, I know I'm not the bishop, but I know the bishops' conference will speak against it if the president refuses to sign. And you know the implications for him and his party. You know.
What implications? What implications are you referring to?
Elections, voting. This thing should not be hidden. People. We work in the villages. People are listening. He can bring back the bill to Parliament with good reasons for them to look at it again. But I don't think he can just say, I will not sign.
You say elections. You say elections voting. To be clear, as leaders of the church, you ask the members not to vote for his party, the MPP.
The church doesn't do that. It doesn't get into elections in terms of telling them what to do or not to do. We advise. But the people themselves, because you are in villages, you are in cities, you are in towns, the church is almost everywhere. You know their minds. And they themselves know. Right? If the president fails to sign, you may know the consequence.
They will not get the votes of vast majority of your members.
I'm sure.
But will you actively in your church and using your pulpit speak against it?
Speak against
his decision if he decides to take the advice not to assent, which obviously will influence people's decisions in the polling booth.
Position. You know, from the beginning of this bill, the church has been part of the process. We gave our opinions, everything to Parliament, the committee that worked on it, and we still continue to speak on it. So when he fails to assent, we shall speak. The church will speak. The church will give its opinion of what he has done.
Most Reverend, thank you very much. That's the very Reverend Father Clement Kwesi Addo, the Secretary General of the National Catholic Secretariat, the Ghana Catholic Bishops Conference there. And there's more on this developing story, as you may know. It's a major story developing all the time today. The Majority Leader has been addressing a news conference asking that this bill be challenged at the Supreme Court. It's coming on the day when we also got wind of this circular put together by the Finance Ministry, working with the Central Bank and the GRA to advise the president on the potential economic implications. There is more to this. We'll be hearing from the sponsors of the bill. Roxy Nelson Dafiamekwa will join us on the back of the assertions by the Majority Leader that the constitutional questions that he's raised today, encouraging anybody to go out there and challenge it. We'll also hear from Professor Bokwing, an economist, on the subject raised by the Finance Ministry on the potential economic consequences for Ghana. You heard us analyze already. If you put in the context of what else is happening on the continent for African countries who are already taking this step, and that IMF program, you can make up your own mind as you may.
PP, in the upcoming presidential elections, if President Akufo-Addo bows to the pressure, the latest pressure from the Finance Ministry, we'll also be hearing from pro-gay groups, Shraj also, if they refuses to assent to the proper human, sexual and family values bill passed by Parliament.
Because in this advice that we've now seen that the Finance Minister has given to the presidency on this, as far as it relates to potential economic impact, they say, quote, His Excellency the President may have to defer assenting to the bill until the court rules on the legal issues tabled by the key national stakeholders, CSOs and Shraj. Now, we've heard from the Catholic Bishops Conference categorical that if the president takes this advice, there will be political consequences at the polls, and that the president can be sure of that. I want to bring in one of the sponsors of the bill, lawyer himself, Member of Parliament, Roxing Nelson Dafiamekwa, joins us right now on the telephone line. Thank you, Roxing, and thank you for staying on the line with us as we begin to unpack a few more of the issues unfolding tonight, Roxing.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to have joined you.
We'll also be joined by Professor Bokwing, who is also joining us with his thoughts on the Finance Ministry's position. But Roxy, let me start with you. Your colleague and leader in Parliament, the Majority Leader, has been addressing news conference. It's clear that this matter needs to be interrogated at the Supreme Court. He's asking anybody who care to listen to go to the Supreme Court. You're not opposed to that, are you? I mean, this is something that is healthy for our democracy.
Of course, Evans, of the last person to oppose anybody seeking the constitutionality or otherwise of this law. And so if the call is being made for anybody to proceed to the Supreme Court, it's all good. But the Majority Leader is my classmate. We studied together, we entered law school together, completed together, and I've been in practice before we came to Parliament. He knows that a law until assented to is no law. And so if he's canvassing for people to go to court, it amounts to premature ejaculation. He should wait. Let the law be assented to, and then we'll take care from there.
I mean, there's a school of thought, there's a legal school of thought that says that they currently we have a product from Parliament. The Parliament has passed this bill, and because Parliament has passed this bill, then you have this legal product. Yes, it's not been formally consummated yet because the president hasn't signed it, but that in itself can be subject of a court action. Well, what's your take on that legally?
There's no law that backs this proposition. The law is very clear. The bill is still in the state that it is, to the extent that it's not been assented by the president to become a law. It remains a declaration of intention by Parliament. So you cannot challenge a declaration of intention in a court of law. Your course of action cannot ride upon a declaration of intention. So that kind of school of thought is faulty. It's built on a faulty premise. I am ready to file amicus in respect of anybody who will go to challenge this matter. But I'm saying that let the law be assented to, given effect as law properly so called. Then the validity in terms of its constitutionality can be challenged. But until we get there, any call for any person to proceed to the Supreme Court is premature. Indeed, let me place it on record that last year, some persons actually proceed to the Supreme Court. You recall a group of CEOs who went to the Supreme Court to challenge this bill, but they were told that the bill cannot be challenged unless it becomes law.
Because that time it had not been passed.
Sorry?
That time it hasn't been passed. Now you've passed it.
No, passing means until it becomes law. So they were told that they cannot come to the Supreme Court to challenge the validity of a bill before Parliament. It's no law. A bill before Parliament is a declaration of intention. It can be abandoned. So to that extent, you have no cause of action. So actually people went to court. When we invited memoranda, about 200 memoranda on the matter. So we know that people are lying in wait to go to court when this becomes law properly so called.
Now, to the substance of the issues that led the majority leader to say somebody to go to court, he still hammers on the point of custodial sentence in there.
Yeah.
We just listened to the Catholic Bishops' Conference, the very Reverend Father Clement Kwesi AJ.
Yeah.
They support this bill wholeheartedly, except that he says tonight that when it comes to the subject of custodial sentencing, they are ready to soften their stance on it, that they believe something can be done about that, and that they are willing to support a review. What do you say to that?
Now, we have just passed the law. It's not being assented. It's not being implemented. Afenyo raised these matters on the floor, and he was defeated. With reasons underpinning these propositions and amendments were defeated. One, we seek to penalize certain conduct. And in providing the penal provision for such prescribed conduct, we've added custodial sentence. Why? Because where somebody engages in a repeat conduct, if you say that we shouldn't impose a custodial sentence, and that is only the non-custodial, somebody can decide to engage in the conduct. He or she goes back to the court. The court is constrained in imposing only a fine. So we have made several other provisions where the court has the option to impose a fine or a custodial sentence or both. So it is not true that we have looked at only custodial sentence and there's no option for a fine. It's only in respect of one or two offenses. In the other issue that they raised about the exercise of editorial discretion by media houses, persons are still reading the original bill as it came to Parliament. They've not averted their mind to the bill as has been presently passed by Parliament. It's gone through a lot of amendments. So, for instance, in respect of Section 10 and 11 of the law, we have subjected that to the provisions of the Constitution. So that, for instance, you can run a program and seek views on the matter. There's no menstrual, there's no ill motive that you'll be promoting the gayism in this country. So we cannot prescribe that. That right is sacrosanct. It's in the Constitution. So we cannot enact a law to take that away from you. But they've not adverted their mind to it, and they're still saying that even advocacy. No, if you do willful advocacy to promote this in this country, we prescribe that. The media houses have the right to look at the pros and cons, and by way of educating the public about the dangers of engaging in this. You can only look at the dangers if you hear from those who are in it or who are.
But on the substantive matter of the custodial sentence, do I hear you say that once it's passed, once it's assented to and it becomes law, and if somebody challenges and it comes back, you are willing to take a second look, considering the position of the Catholic Bishops' Conference?
Yes, in fact, indeed, in the Constitution makes provision for even the president. If the president has reservations regarding certain provisions of the law mandates him to make further amendments and subject that to consultation with the Council of State, so that it will be remitted to Parliament for Parliament to consider it. But people are not reading.
As a sponsor of the bill. As a sponsor,
hold on, Evans, let me finish. The Constitution itself makes provision for this. That where the president, in being asked to assent to a bill that has been passed by Parliament, has other further views on portions of that legislation, he is mandated in law to make those amendments.
And as a sponsor of the bill, if that comes, you willing to support it?
Why not? No, it's not as if as a sponsor I have an option. The Constitution says that.
No, I'm talking about the specific. I'm talking about the specifics.
When the president does that,
I'm talking about the specifics.
We must consider it.
Yeah, I'm talking about the specific issue relating to custodial sentencing. That take it off the table. You're willing to support scrapping that clause in that.
If I may respond. So my point is that if the issue of custodial sentence is what the president feels strongly about at this stage, he's mandated in the Constitution to make.
Yeah, you've made that point, but I'm asking specifically you as a sponsor. If that comes, assuming it comes, would you support would you consider taking that out of the law?
I am a member of the House, so we'll consider it.
Okay. Roxy, thank you very much. I want to quickly bring in Professor Bokwing into the conversation regarding the economic impact that the Finance Ministry's memo had highlighted to the President. Also joining me right now to explore that a bit more because of the potential for Western countries to impose sanctions on us using the aid route now as a weapon line for us. What really does international law say about this? Can they do so? We'll talk to a constitutional lawyer pretty shortly. But Prof, let me bring you in very quickly into this conversation. You've monitored the developments over the period, considering the Finance Minister's position on this $3.8 billion dollars they say we are risking here if we go ahead, sign this into law. Knowing where you stand right now, can this economy survive with that significant loss if indeed we go ahead to sign? And first of all, do you really believe the position of the Finance Ministry that this is potentially something that we could lose? Hello, Prof. Bokwing. Hello, Prof. Okay, we may have lost him there, but I have with me on the line Professor PJ Tuya, who's also joining us on this conversation. And Prof, thanks for your time here on Newsnight.
My pleasure.
Great to have you. So we've seen the Finance Ministry's position on this, the potential economic implications. We've heard from the IMF say they're watching us very closely. Can they really do this if indeed we go ahead and sign? Can they use the aid route to sanction us, if you may, because we've gone ahead to sign this bill into law?
Yes, they've done it before, and so it's likely they will ensure that they go through with the threats that they have issued, if I can call it so, and implement it. However, my concern is that there has been a resolution by the Human Rights Council of the UN, and it states clearly that such an attempt is clearly in violation of the sovereignty of a particular country. So it is important that we review that decision and question it so that when countries are making such laws dealing with LGBTQ, we will know where to draw the line and ensure that this Human Rights Council resolution is respected.
I guess then the ball falls squarely within the court of Ghana, does it not? I mean, if this Human Rights Council resolution is there, that gives us an avenue to fight back, to challenge this threat.
Well, I don't know if it will mean going to court or whether the court can make a decision on that. But the point is clear that the resolution says that it deplores the use of external pressure and coercive measures against states, particularly developing countries, through the use of economic sanctions or application of conditionality to official aid assistance and so on. So that it means that if this matter is to be addressed in a way that will ensure that there is no interference in the internal affairs of the state, we have to look at two things. The resolution also calls for the fact that developing countries have certain leeway in terms of their cultural circumstances, historical circumstances, religious circumstances, and so on, to determine how they deal with the LGBTQ issue. However, at the same time, there is a minimum threshold where there is a binding obligation on all states to ensure that any law that is passed meets the minimum human rights threshold. And if you examine the current bill which has been passed by Parliament, it doesn't meet that cut. However, the resolution does not lie in IMF and the World Bank issuing those threats and trying to cut aid for Ghana as a way to compel Ghana to abide by these international commitments which lie in the Human Rights Council resolution. So it is important that when these issues come up, every country as a member of the UN, we submit periodic reports to the Human Rights Council for review. And when it so comes, these issues are addressed. It's one of the issues we addressed. And in fact, not long ago, Ghana had the opportunity to present this report before the Human Rights Council. And some of these issues actually came up, and that was before we had passed this law.
Prof, thank you very much. And that's Professor Pejutia there giving us his thoughts on this. On the back of that, he cites the Human Rights Council's resolution in 2016, indicating that Western states cannot impose economic sanctions on countries simply because they adopt anti-LGBTQ legislation that criminalizes the act of homosexuality. Where do you stand on this subject? Is it worth the cost?
3.8 billion.
The cost, 3.8 billion. Now we know the cost. Mm-hmm. The cost of the economy is 3.8 billion. Is it worth it all? Give me your thoughts on this. 055 11 11 997.